1. The legacy of totalitarianism in 801.1. Does commuting have any long-term health benefits? Oh, why fucking cum swapper writing is hard, okay? Anon whined, while drinking a very good drink that he made at home by himself from a plastic cup. It was bitter and salty. The sensation of swallowing it reminded him of having a heavy cold. Time for a pineapple diet, he said to nobody in particular, the hum of his computer his solitary companion. He depressed the F5 key with a chubby finger waiting for the thread to update. It didn't. A seemingly benign, but in fact rare, gesture. Most gentlemen of the internet would sooner push the mouse to hit the refresh button when refreshing than remove their anonymous maybe just cut the prawns out, nobody in particular replied. Anon had little time to consider the words before he was bathed in radiant light and the walls around him dissolved. I see you've been cheating on your calories, shouted a giant effigy of Robin Williams too, and the time has come to pay for your sins. Please visit infowars.com. Cackled a small white supremacist rat. It was all too much for Anon. His brain imploded with the force of 1 zillion pages of penchant prose. Liquefied grey matter oozed from Anon's nostrils, staining his pre-filthed underpants. The lizardmen claim another victim, said the white supremacist rat, solemnly. 1.2. Who are the lizardmen, and what do they want? 5 minutes earlier, they work for the Mascata Man, Anon typed. At least, that was what he wanted them to believe. Only he knew the actual truth. And that truth was as well as Robin Williams. Of course, the Illuminati censors the truth. Even here. The Illuminati have programmed the drinking water, so that when confronted with the truth you will only see black boxes. This is why the truth must be given to you more subtly. Hopefully, reading this book will show you the truth. Exhausted hand from its comfort place. Mouse. Indeed, the seemingly benign, but in fact actually rare gesture would demonstrate that this Anon was rather more active than his meticulously attended self-image would imply. Let's read on. 2. Now deceased. Rip in peace. To the legacy of totalitarianism, in a Tundra he typed in Google Docs. He was toiling on a collective work of postmodern literature with some of his internet friends. They were known collectively as Los Revolucionarios de las Palabras. None of this rambling shit makes any sense, said Anon's mother, whom he was forcing to proofread the aforementioned rambling profanity. But that's the point. He screamed, slamming his keyboard with a pudgy fist, his greasy hand sweat sticking loosely to the desk, like cheap knockoff Play-Doh. Writing is hard, okay? Anon whined, while drinking his own cum from a plastic cup. It was bitter and salty. The sensation of swallowing it reminded him of having a heavy cold. Time for a pineapple diet, he said to nobody in particular. He depressed the F5 key with a chubby finger, waiting for the thread to update. Maybe just cut the prawns out, nobody in particular replied. Anon had little time to consider the words before he was bathed in radiant light and the walls around him dissolved. I see you've been cheating on your calories, shouted a giant effigy of Robin Williams, and the time has come to pay for your sins. Please visit infowars.com. Cackled a small white supremacist rat. It was all too much for Anon. His brain imploded with the force of 1 zillion pages of penchant prose. Liquefied grey matter oozed from Anon's nostrils, staining his already filthy underpants. The lizardmen claim another victim, said the white supremacist rat solemnly. 1.3. How Jesse Broke the Mortal Plane and Other Short Stories 15 minutes earlier. 3. Anonymous 1.3.1. Dakota Fanning and the Lizardman Grooming Project. Meanwhile, elsewhere, terrified high school girls flee from the tentacled creature from Titan, its sinuous limbs writhing with menacing intent, typed Dakota Fanning to Bob Saget on mail chat. This is all too perfect, thought Bob to himself. He had already betted Kristen Stewart back when she was still nubile. In his mind, he pictured pleasurefully the horde of schoolgirls fleeing while limiting small head-like sounds. This made his weenus harder, the all-too-familiar J-pop playing on a loop. Grooming Dakota had been challenging, thought-stimulating, and now her young mind spewed forth only the most sexually depraved content. His veiny gray male clitoris blushed back at him like a lawn gnome. You could have been a duck. His mother shouted from another room. Could have, he affirmed. If the MOHEL had not ruined my BRIS. Damn them all hell. Bob shouted. Damn them all. He choked on frothy saliva, and his face was bruised and swollen in exertion. Wait a second. Saja snapped to attention. Mother has been dead for years. He considered this fact very carefully, and it dawned on him, Uncle Jessii. Uncle Jesse sprung into the room wearing the ashen gray wedding dress of Bob's own dear sweet mother. How did you get that dress? She was buried in that. Jesse was in a state beyond words. He gnashed his teeth and held his arms to the sky at strange angles. My God, Bob smiled, tears brimming in his eyes. You have truly transcended to a higher state. An elevated existence awaits you. Reality itself vibrated, and a profusion of gold light bleached Bob's vision. We're entering the singularity. It's happening. He shouted above the roar of the black hole. Then darkness took them all, save for Uncle Jesse, who still writhes and gnashes in the abyss. His reptilian mind turning. Slitted eyes always searching for the legacy of totalitarianism, in a Tundra stars, and with them, home. A queer-colored, neo-post-Marxist feminist woman rat walked in upon the sorry scene, and dudded solemnly at reality, a white cis male Islamophobic speciesist capitalist social construct. The lizard people had Robin Quivers taken another victim. 1.3.2 of Joyce and Jen in the highest and loneliest echelons of literary esteem. Harry, blushing, blooming, much like a flower, takes lunch, after a very hard morning, of experimenting in new forms of bookbinding, a particular method where semen might be used to hold the pages together, as in his mind it always has done. He imagines the buck-toothed wonder opening his jaws, expecting his mud-following nights. Terrible nights of constipation, but instead comes wonderful nacreous film across those dental calamities. While watching from the mezzanine, Joyce muses, listening to farts from the other room. But faith, oh faith, that has with the years dwindled to but a prosaic nihilism that is brought about in no small part by errant parentheticals and sentences upon sentences sprawling serpentine across the page, seems unlikely ever to return to poor Harry B. to his audience upon the world stage. Once graced by the giants of his time, whom he so venerated and consecrated in his private canon, his mark, he despaired. The old Black Panther members are dying, and in their place weep a sea of bandanas and Asians, skinny jeans and beards, in every effort to defy causality, who think talent may be bled from noodles and studios. He addressed the Great One presently. Oh, Northrop. It is a mild sriracha sauce, and a big-go-looking future. Is this what they thought on such a day, thought very much such a tragedy, as this, our teachers despairing us and our postmodern ramblings? 40 years ago. 40 years of continual 5 anonymous verbose diarrhea, of perverse ramblings and shitstorms. 40 years on the Petilicy of irony not actually irony. 40 years has Harold forsaken the peaceful life of actual literature, for 40 years, to make war on the horrors of the literary avant-garde. Yes, Northrop, out on those 40 years I have not spent 3 with dignity. 1.3.3 How Anon discovered the drinking water hoax and other tales one night, while browsing /x/ Anon happened to stumble upon a post by David Dickman. This is his story. Visit DAVIDICKE. The lizardmen are controlling our lives, and poisoning our intellectual thought space through the 5th dimension. All public figures are lizardmen in disguise. Visit DAVIDICKE.com. The sign read. It was accompanied by a picture of Costanza from the ever-popular and slightly postmodern television show, Seinfeld. After looking into him and watching a few shittier videos, Anon finally realized the true reason he had no girlfriend: lizardmen, Jews, and the Illuminati, all conspiring against Anon, making it impossibly hard for him to get the pure, virginal, Asian, QT 3.14 GF he deserved. This triggered a long-repressed memory of a book he read years ago. He remembered reading something about infowars.com, as well as some bizarre nonsense about Tourette, and decided to check that out as well. He reached for his plastic cup and took another sip of fluoridated, pure Mountain Dew. Suddenly he realized that, if the lizardmen were truly everywhere, then that meant he had to get the message out there, and so he went to // and started a thread. "They work for the Mascata Man," Anon typed quickly, as if the keyboard was set ablaze. At least, that was what he wanted them to believe. Only he knew the actual truth. And that truth was 6. The legacy of totalitarianism, in a Tundra as well as Robin Quivers. Of course, the Illuminati censors the truth. Even here the Illuminati have programmed the drinking, and so it goes. 1.4. The Origins of Anon, or How to Cope with TFW No GF. 10 years earlier, around the time of his 13th birthday, Anon realized he was different. While walking to lunch with his best and only friend, Anon, a vicious group of girls descended upon them, both harpy-like in their stoicism. "Are you gonna have another fedora tipping party, Anon? Can we come?" Still innocent and gullible, Anon invited them all to his house for Pizza 3 the coming Saturday, not knowing that this would turn out to be a pivotal moment in man's understanding of the male clitoris. Anon succumbed to a sudden, overwhelming sensation of existential quandary, and, moments later, he lay unconscious upon the floor, limp tendrils of tagliatelle hanging from his pockets, leaking creamy sauce. Far away, a saurian cackle could be heard, and a small, rat-sounding voice squeaked, "The Jews did this." The lizardman had claimed another. 13 years and 9 months earlier than previous 3, it was with this offer that Anon sought to propel his notions of sexuality to what he perceived to be the next level. His plan, so formed in those precious few seconds, and drawn from the hazy, chaotic blueprints of dreams, was to eat half of a pizza from the doughy, flaccid tip, and then replace it in the box. There it would ideally be consumed by one of the party-going females, and their saliva would mix in the mush of food and mouth. In so doing they would precause an apple for runner to a kiss, a concept he thought best to reserve for his college days, in the comfortably distant and sanguine future. Circumflex 7. Anonymous scene, which was in turn 10 years earlier than the original scene. Anon's father grunted in primal delight as he shot a wad of spudge deep into Anon's mammy-to-be's front bum. Ropey tendrils of semen coated the walls of the classroom in a sticky glaze. Yet more of the slime dripped from the light fixtures and windows, or soaked, disgustingly, into the carpet. The air was filled with the odor of rotting shellfish. It was a single moment that changed the fate of the multiverse. The Illuminati used time travel to cut off the flow of certain information, and the 5-dimensionals, lizardmen, rats, Robin Quivers, Williams effigies, and more, had all decided to meet at this point in time, each with their own agenda, each set on manipulating the event as they saw fit. The lizardman gathered samples of semen from Anon's father. Spoiler, the editor is such a multi-dimensional faggot that lizardmen hold a meeting to find out who was his actual mother/father. What he doesn't know is that it's been illegal for lizardmen to have sex with humans ever since the Great War of Space Budapest. "This will make lovely addition to the drinking water," communicated the lizardman formerly known as Prince. He boarded his saucer ship and flew it into the hole in the Antarctic, heading for the hollow center of the Earth. Within a few months, the substance had been successfully introduced into the water supplies of most countries, the surface dwellers completely oblivious to its insidious effects. The Robin Williams effigy and his Cloxian rodent friend took note of this and decided to stick to spring water from this point onwards. Robin reached through hypertime and rearranged the molecules of Anon's father's sperm. He had to make sure that only the top-quality genes made it to Anon's mother's womb, or else, he feared, the multiverse's hero may end up being some basement-dwelling neat. Unfortunately, while he was doing this, the white supremacist rat distracted him by pinching Anon's mother's arse cheek. In a moment of hilarity, the wrong sperm was brought to the womb, and the multiverse's, as well as Anon's, fate was sealed. 8. The legacy of totalitarianism, in a Tundra 9 years, 354 days, 10 hours, and 3 minutes earlier than Chapter 1.4, 55 light seconds outside of Anon's light cone at a relative velocity of 150 mm/s1 away from Sol. It was Father's Day, and Lizard Bob Saget, of the planet ERTH, was once again grooming Dakota Fanning over the internet. "I wonder if there are other ERTHs," wondered Dakota Fanning, over a piece of software identical to Skipe, but titled Epics. "I don't doubt it," purred Lizard Saget, clicking and hissing with his reptilian tongue. If a universe is indeed infinite, every permutation of reality will happen, and is destined to exist. And yet, said Dakota, apparently already an expert in multiverse transmitology, but explained the following for the sake of our clueless readers. Surely if they are within the same universe, these ERTHS and variations must be able to interact. Furthermore, since they are all connected through certain kinds of perception, the ERTHS must all be linked together. Therefore what happens on this ERTH could in fact have a profound effect on, say, a young neckbeard named Anon roughly 55 light-seconds out of our light cone at a relative velocity of 150 mm s1 away from Eshel. In that case, said Lizard Sage, who, as it happened, was stationed on ERTH solely to trick Dakota Fanning into using her trans-dimensional knowledge to benefit the Lizardman master race. Perhaps you should concentrate on making this Anon feel an overwhelming sense of existential quandary at this very moment. I will try, said Dakota. At the last second she noticed a piece of spaghetti out of the corner of her eye. Thoughts of spaghetti and despair crossed a universe, and entered the brain of Anon, causing him, via a rather convoluted string of quantum events, to collapse. Lizard Bob Sage clicked an ecstasy for completing his mission. Dakota Fanning was now his molest and groom for all of hypertime. 1.4.1 Dowlin's Mysterium Tremendum 9 Anonymous Dowlin sat at twitter.com, in a cafe, drinking a Diet Jizz smoothie, typing something on his iPhone that he thought he was going to tweet. Since you've been gone. Since you've been gone. I'm out of my head, can't take it, dun 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 dun. Pass the bowl, said Tommy P to Dowlin over mail chat. This is getting weird, thought Dowlin. This is getting weird, typed Dowlin over mail chat. Velcroing on his sneakers to take a walk, still drinking some young guy's smoothie, Dowlin cried, my soul as a pathway of dedications ending at the growth point of a living actuality, which in turn will soon die. He thought he could smell vagina. He disappeared backwards through the dark, fantasizing about Dakota Fanning. 1.4.2 Scooby-Doo. And the case of the missing meaning of existence, so why not just kill yourself? A for us pay ray QVOUSAVE natty gains, Connard. Said Scooby 1961. Shaggy replied, oh Monday IEU. CE leave rest Raymond profund, come leave agent Tamir. And they talked long into the night. Scooby reached into his satchel, and pulled out a baguette. It was time to get really pretentious. Polyandrostructuralism, post-ISM. Verb, bagakook, oh okay, sart, fart, pharaoh, away through time and space. And all things in between. Scooby 1961 replied with a shit-eating grin, hey Shaggy, but I've Raymond and Vian Fonse, ma bite the and profondment danced on petit cul and ce moment. For a controversial chapter, some go as far to consider it non-canon. However, Harold Bloom makes a convincing argument for its inclusion in Harold Bloom's Shitrary Canon, the worst of postmodern academia, ISBN 13-978-1934254165. 10. The Legacy of Totalitarianism. In a Tundra 1.5, Anon succumbs to existential frostbite while traversing the tundra -7 years later, and the beginning, the incident, that started Anon's interest in literature was most peculiar. The thought had occurred to him, out of nowhere, or so he thought, for he knew nothing of Dakota Fanning and Bob Sage, while he masturbated early one Sunday morning, his genitals sticky and orange from Cheeto dust, his Mountain Dew-smelling breath coming in wheezing gasps as he frantically cycled between browser tabs. Please God, don't make me have to go to school. The 8th graders make fun of me. Anon's reverie was interrupted, as a trickle of pale, watery semen emerged from the tip of his penis, forming a weak, tear-like droplet. Unable to reach for a tissue in time, it dribbled down onto Anon's computer chair, wicking into the fabric. Standing up and trying to contain the spillage, his orgasm already ruined, Anon emitted the remainder of his ejaculate onto his Razer Blockwido mechanical gaming keyboard, and howled in impotent rage. With his computer bedged, Anon turned to other forms of prurient entertainment. First, Anon turned on his television. However, finding every channel showing nothing but Spanish-dubbed reruns of Seinfeld, he tried to dig up some old albums. At first it was going well. He had found his old Teletubbies original soundtrack. collector's edition complete with holographic trading cards, but after the 8th listen he grew restless, and finally he picked up a copy of The Legacy of Totalitarianism, in a Tundra. He found that he strongly identified with the main character. It was as if the author had known him his whole life, and written this book solely for him. Little did he know how right he was. 1.6 Year of the Unchecked CIS Privilege Slimy. 11 Anonymous on Mail Chat. He thought it was a lady. Thousands of miles away, Google servers logged every word he wrote, archiving them forever within monolithic hard drive cabinets buried deep within the Earth's crust for the nefarious purposes of the lizardman, etc. Something about an unnamed 20-something male. Steamy P.O. Rusty P. Daddy, why don't you love me? Active volcanoes. But I don't activate any volcanoes. You must search for the volcanoes within yourself. I'm scared though. It's okay, darling. Volcanoes are scary. They're meant to be that way, so people don't wander under them. Her eyes burned with genuine red wonder. 1.7 The day the dawn died and Marxists cried, Harry B. opened up his Bible, turning to Job and 3.11. Don't be a homosexual. He tore out the page and spat on it, picking it up again to reattach it to the holy book, with his loving juices. He had to return it to the library later that evening, but the mission was already looking grim. He realized at that moment there was no God, and when dawn with her red rose fingers rose once more, he awoke a changed man. My actuality does not imply my existence, shouted young Harold. Emptiness was his, and warm maternal space. Death and starvation, disease, and plague, rape, and war of all time meant nothing to him. Every night, bishoted with a romantic glow, he would read his Byron and Shakespeare by lamplight under the covers, careful to never wake his parents. Life and death, he would say. Life and death are no longer things of importance to me. This is when Thomas Pynchon realized he was still in the process of exiting his mother's womb. And then with a boom his mother's belly said, I couldn't stop myself from peeking occasionally through the screen of my hair at the strange boy next to me during the whole class. He never relaxed his stiff 12 The Legacy of Totalitarianism, in a tundra position on the edge of his chair, sitting as far from me as possible. I could see his hand on his left leg was clenched into a fist, tendon standing out under his pale skin. This, too, never had relaxed. He had the long sleeves of his white shirt pushed up to his elbows, and his forearm was surprisingly hard and muscular beneath his light skin. He wasn't nearly as slight as he'd looked next to his burly brother. Doomed, but still her vagina nevertheless exhaled Pynchon's tiny baby body. The star looked down as if to whisper to the Andalusian girls on the mountain to pass their flowers to him, and he replied, Yes, I said, yes I will, yes. This is not a dream, Big Papa Pynchon said, aloud to himself, grasping his beating heart, and farting like a Swedish nymph. Oh, but 'twas once, now is not. Yes, the newspapers were right. It was a dream. Or was it? Tommy P. said, letting out a sigh of relief. His entire existence, as well as his novels, were lifeless phantasms and fancies of the bodiless imagination which now lay aborted, face down, inside the flying saucer of a saurian science team. How did the elder gods ever allow Thomas Pynchon's novels? This being one of them. 1.8 The unlikely string of events that lead to Deron becoming the possessor of this very piece of literature that you see on your screen right now. Original content do not steal. Lizardmen are capable of strange feats. Anonymous workforce, image boards, faceless slaves typing at computer screens. In this case the lizardman had enlisted dear, sweet Harry, binder of books, to create a solid novel from these rambling Ethernet pages. In return for his services he was promised the complete works of James Joyce, including many stories never actually published, most notably An Ode to Nora's Shit Flap 5. The lizardman, however, did not intend for 5 such a rare find as this story, that only 7 hand-printed 13 anonymous anon, to receive this book. No, the book was destined for the Google archives, where it could be reversed, distilled into pure fluoride, and disseminated to the citizens of Earth via the water supply. Once the testing stage was complete, and the poison was proven to be fertile, they would next aim their sights to ERTH and any other planet the lizardmen controlled. Lizard Foster Wallace, who had killed and beheaded his mortal body long ago, sped through hypertime toward the archives, talons clutching at the leather tome containing the legacy of totalitarianism. In a Tundra he was distracted by some commodious vicus of fate, by hyperdespairity, the very same trans-dimensional pasta that was conjured into being by Dakota Fanning, and destined for a nun. The book was entangled in the starchy strands, and instantly became bonded to a nun's life centipede, bouncing through his sphere of time for eternities, until finally, in section 1.5 of this very story, he paid fleeting attention to it for the first time. Lizard Foster Wallace witnessed this, and it inspired him to write a post-puerile epic titled Shakespeare Pasta Time XXX, which is hilarious to lizardmen, but nonsensical to humans. Pretty damn funny to kikes as well. 1.9 A waifu for a castle. He touched solid ground at last. His feet didn't hurt, but boy oh boy did his mind ever. Oh God, why am I so patrician? Why am I such a good writer? He set out that day to find a GF who pretended to like the same books he pretended to like. He found her squatting over a sewage copies are said to have existed, made by Joyce himself and bestowed upon 7 stout Irish women he had bedded one summer in their halls of stone. 6 Pasta time being a pun referring to both 1, it being time for a nun to eat some pasta and solve the hyper-crisis, and 2, the pasta that triggered this whole net of hyper-crisis being sent through hyper-time itself.